Good afternoon, pure potential enjoyers, Dynasty fantasy football enthusiasts. We are here after week 7, midway point of the fantasy football regular season for most of your leagues. So interesting time on the calendar. We've got injuries, we've got overperformers, we've got underperformers, we've got lots going on. I will pick up some comments here at the start. Shout out to you guys that are showing up early today to talk some week 7. We'll get into all the usual stuff today. We'll do the risers and fallers. We'll do the any second list. I'd be lying if I said it's the most prepared, the most notes I've ever had for a Monday stream, but we're gonna get through it. We're going to try to make some sense of what we just watched and obviously update our thoughts as the week goes on. But first guy I saw in the chat here was the Pokemon guy, 2231, one of our members, I believe. Luke Anderson is here. Lots of members. Fresno, Max, what's up, guys? Luke Anderson's here. Goldhorn is here for Monday Sadness. We don't have to be sad. There's always some things to make us sad on any given Sunday, but plenty of interesting and fun stuff as well. Some quick questions right off the top here. Should I trade Woody Marks plus for Jalen Warren? I mean, I have Jalen Warren ranked ahead of Woody Marks. I wouldn't add anything massive on top. But if you're looking for points right now, I definitely think Warren's your better bet. And I'd certainly be willing to add at least like a 3rd round pick or something. Yes, I'm dumping Joe Flacco for any 3rd round pick on a non-contender. I mean, I just don't really see... I don't see what the upside is otherwise. He's obviously not a long-term play. You know your league better than I do, but I just feel I feel a lot of doubt that anyone's going to give you a 2nd round pick for him. So I think that's what you're looking to get if you're not using him. I don't know about Travis Hunter over Brian Thomas Jr., Mike, but we will talk about both of those players today. Risers and fallers. Going to be a big one for those guys. I'm not always there when you call, but I'm almost on time. Yeah, that sounds like me. All right. So, again, lots to talk about here. I didn't see this stat, so I'm going to throw it out here from Charlie. Terrence Ferguson post-buy, rookie bump, season high 49% snap share and 10% target share. I'm sure there's some reality to this, although I'd be curious what the numbers looked like before the game was completely out of hand. Because it has been, I mean, it was a very lopsided affair. So we probably saw some guys get snaps that they might not have gotten in a close game. But regardless, Ferguson getting on the field is a good thing. We obviously cannot take rookies getting playing time, even highly drafted rookies getting playing time for granted. Travion Henderson being Exhibit A. So got to take the wins where we can get them. Boogaloo says, what should I try to offload Harvey for? I mean, it seems pretty obvious this is like a bad time to try to move RJ Harvey. I don't really see any way that his value can get lower than it is right now on the market. Like he's getting very, very low end usage. I don't know. It just doesn't really seem like a good time to move him. Like if you could get like an early second, I'm kind of fine pivoting, re-rolling on that, but I don't know who's giving you that. So he's probably just a better hold right now. All right. GG's in no fun league. Yeah, dude, I was worried I was gonna lose the win streak. I got Puka out this week. Igbuka was out this week. Zay Flowers on bye, and then Tet didn't come through for me, but made it work somehow. So thank you for starting Tua. All right, let's talk a little bit about injuries before we get into some of the stats and everything. Just wanted to let you guys know that the reporting on Jaden Daniels is that it's not a serious injury to his hamstring. I do suspect he'll miss week 8. I just don't really see them rushing him back. So probably out week 8. I didn't actually check when their bye is. Probably something I should have looked at. Let me do that real quick. Bye is week 12. So I don't think they're going to like hold him out that long. We'll see if he's back week 9 against Seattle or week 10 against Detroit. But hopefully he gets well soon. Very, very good fantasy quarterback when he's on the field. He's had some rough breaks with these injuries in the pocket. I'm absolutely taking Drake May in a first over Josh Allen. I have Josh Allen and Drake May in the same tier at this point in Dynasty. And I really don't think that that's an overreaction. We're talking about an MVP candidate right now in his second season, age 23. Just playing unreal football right now and, running the ball a lot too. So I would absolutely take a first. I still have Josh Allen ranked ahead, but I might explore some of those types of tier downs for Drake May in some leagues this week. I don't think you need to be worried about this yet for Lamar. Like Lamar not coming back. I don't really think that's going to happen. If we look at the NFL standings right now for the AFC North, we've got Steelers at 4-2, Bengals 3-4, Browns 2-5, Ravens 1-5. The Ravens come back from their bye next week. And then, wait, is that right? No, the Steelers haven't had a bye week yet, right? So they're actually 4-3. Steelers are 4-3. I think Bengals are. Sorry, this is weird. Did the Steelers have a bye already? Yeah, they did. Week 5. Okay. So the Ravens come back from their bye in week 8. They play the Bears. Very winnable game. They play the Dolphins. Very winnable game. Vikings, likely with JJ McCarthy starting. Very winnable game. Browns, Jets, Bengals. I mean, the Ravens could legitimately come back and run off 6 straight games, and they still have the Steelers twice. So I think the Ravens are still going to kind of control their own destiny and potentially still be in this division race like late in the season because they have a cakewalk of a schedule. Lamar's going to come back. Like I think that this team is going to get right to some extent, and I don't think they're going to be benching Lamar. All right. Let's continue, guys. Other injuries to be aware of. Brian Thomas, some kind of a shoulder injury. I don't know what the severity is. I did see one of the Twitter docs. I can't think of who it was at this point, unfortunately. There was a clip of Brian Thomas getting very little contact on his shoulder in a route late in the game, and then he pulls up and he comes out of the game. Very weird. I don't think he was like faking an injury, but it certainly didn't look like something that would have been an injury on that play. So the speculation was he's had an injury to his shoulder that was aggravated there, some kind of like a, labral tear or something. So I do think that there's some validity to the idea that Brian Thomas is just very injured right now and that he doesn't play well when he's hurt. I don't think that he just forgot how to play wide receiver. I think he has a wrist injury. I think he probably has a shoulder injury based on what we just saw. And I think he's just not right. And so that's why he's going to appear on the Fallers list. I think he's probably going to be one of my favorite buy low candidates in the offseason. Just letting you know right now. I think he's going to be a big buy low for me, but I did make him a faller for this week, and I've lowered him in the rankings because I just don't have a ton of faith in him rest of season. Like Lawrence is playing erratic ball right now. Again, Thomas isn't healthy. I don't know when he's going to be healthy, so it's difficult right now. Jay Money, appreciate the super chat here, my friend. I guess your name makes some sense. Lamar for Dart plus a first. I'm still taking Lamar here in Dynasty. Unless that's an early first, I'm not really thinking about it. Like, you just want the known commodity. Jackson Dart's really exciting. I've actually acquired a couple of shares, but that's not enough for me to be willing to pivot, tier down from Lamar, because he's just such a safe, high upside asset. And if I have Dart, I think that's one of the better ways you can cash in on the hype. You can cash in on the upside here. So I would take Lamar. All right, other injuries. Kendre Miller, super unfortunate, tore his ACL yesterday. This dude just cannot catch a break in his career. I think it's borderline over for him at this point. It did lead to Alvin Kamara getting the bulk of the touches the rest of the game. We'll see what the running back rotation looks like in the future. I know Devin Neal is there. I'm not entirely sure if he's the next man up or if they have other running backs on the roster that they would go to. Is Cam Akers still there? I can't really remember all the guys that they have, but we'll have to keep an eye on that. See if it's a bump for Kamara long term in terms of his usage, or if they get someone else involved there. And then Justin Fields was benched in the game, not injured, just benched for being bad. I don't know for sure if we go back to him. I think he probably plays again this season, but I don't know if he comes back week 8. Maybe they keep him on the bench for a minute and see what Tyrod can do. Either way, Tyrod Taylor's a guy you want to pick up in Superflex Dynasty if he's not rostered. I think he's just worth having, him and Andy Dalton as well. We saw Bryce Young pick up an ankle injury as well. So Bryce Young, Justin Fields could both miss week 8. Bryce Young is almost certainly going to miss week 8 with an ankle injury. Justin Fields, I just don't see the point in putting him back on the field. He's just not it. So Tyrod, Andy Dalton, very low end, streaming quarterback options, but again, worth rostering in Dynasty. In Superflex, I should say. Akers is in Minnesota. Okay, I see. All right. The other injuries I'm keeping an eye on are Darren Waller, who had some kind of a pectoral injury. I don't know what the deal is with that. No update. He did leave the game, didn't return. Breece Hall had a minor injury in game, but he came back, so I think he is fine. And then Cole Kmet has a back injury. And again, I don't know the severity of that. I am a Colston Loveland fan, and I would suspect that missed time for Cole Kmet would be good for Loveland's outlook. For what it's worth, Ryan Heath had a good tweet that Cole Kmet hasn't actually out-targeted Loveland in the game that they both played since week 2, but it hasn't really translated to a lot of production for Loveland himself. So hopefully, as Loveland gets a little bit healthier from his own injuries and gets further removed from his offseason surgery, gets more acclimated to the offense, I'm hopeful that we're going to see better days from him. It hasn't been great. I'm just not throwing in the towel on such a good and such a young prospect. So, yeah, I'm going to continue to leave the light on for Colston Loveland. Let's get into some stats today. We're going to start out with a little data drop here. I wanted to throw these tweets out. I love these weekly recap threads that JJ Zacharyson does, that Ryan Heath does, that Jacob Gibbs does, and other guys too, like Dwayne McFarland. I love seeing what these guys put out because they just dig into the data so quickly, well before I have a chance to do it during the week. So I love seeing what they put out. I've highlighted these tweets here because I'm not going to get to these guys in the Risers and Fallers, and I did want to touch on them briefly before we move on. So I'll reference some other stats and some other tweets as we go. But these, again, they're not going to be on the lists today, so I wanted to put them out there. From starting with JJ at the top here, Jawan Jennings ran the most routes for the 49ers last night, and only McCaffrey saw more targets. He out-targeted Kendrick Bourne 7-2. I think that Jawan Jennings' time is coming. He's getting healthier. The reporting last week, like self-reported from him, was that he had 2 sprained ankles and 5 broken ribs, which is just insane. Like, I don't know how much of that is embellishment and how much of that is like legit fact, but just a crazy to play a football game in that condition. He seems to be getting healthier here. When Brock Purdy is back in the lineup, I think that's good for Jennings. Like, he's had a good rapport with Brock Purdy, whereas Mac Jones has definitely gravitated a little bit more towards Kendrick Bourne. We will see Kittle get ramped up here. We will see Pearsall get back in the lineup, but I do think Jennings, because this team is passing a lot, can deliver some value on where he was valued this offseason. And I was big on him, so I'm hoping he can get healthy and give us some usable weeks. Then we had Stephon Diggs down here. Ryan Heath tweets that Diggs has hit a 29% target share in 3 of his last 4 games, which is pretty awesome. That's a very, very high number. Over that span, Diggs ranks as the wide receiver 13 by yards per game at 86, and the wide receiver 5 by target share. So he is getting some pretty elite usage from a very elite quarterback at this point. Plenty of good games to come for Stephon Diggs. Definitely encouraging, and they'll probably get into some more pass-heavy game scripts. They're not going to be playing the Tennessee Titans every week. So more competitive games are going to lead to more pass attempts, more production for Stephon Diggs. But he looks like he is, he's not prime Stephon Diggs, but he looks like he's very, very much back. Then we have another one from JJ here about Ladd McConkey. One of my guys, definitely has been a disappointment this year relative to where I had him ranked, where his cost was in Dynasty, but Ladd has scored over his last 3 games 14.9, 23.0, and 15.7 PPR points. In his last 3, it's definitely been a big improvement over his first 4 games, and his target share has been up from 19% to 24.4%. Now, Quentin Johnston missed one of those games, I believe. I think it was just one of those last 3 games. Otherwise, this team has been at full strength. Now, Justin Herbert did have like 58 dropbacks in the most recent week. So that's going to obviously inflate the counting stats, but it doesn't inflate the target share. He had 15 targets on Justin Herbert's 55 or whatever pass attempts. So he was getting peppered. He led the team in targets. He has found the end zone a couple times. So it feels like things are kind of getting right for Ladd. He's always been excellent, and I'm happy to see that the Chargers are remembering that. And then we have another one here from JJ. Quinshon Judkins just ran 9 routes and didn't see a target against the Dolphins. He's seen 1 target over the last 2 games. He still scored 26.4 PPR points. So Judkins is obviously a guy that I was a little bit too low on in the offseason. I will say, I think most of the miss from me was just misreading the legal stuff, which, whatever. I don't really know how I was supposed to read that one, but he's obviously looked really, really good. Arguably the best rookie running back on tape, just from a pure rushing standpoint. I do want to point out that this is still a limitation here. The passing game work doesn't mean it can never come. But that was one of my primary knocks on him, was that he wasn't very involved in college as a pass catcher. There was no guarantee he was going to have that type of a role in the NFL. Now, when you play the Dolphins and you blow them out and you get a bunch of short opportunities in a heavy rainstorm, it doesn't really matter. Scoring 3 rushing touchdowns, that can happen. And don't hear what I'm not saying. I have ranked Judkins very highly since he's been on the field. But I do think, before we go too crazy, before we rank him as, like this first round startup type of asset, we do need to remember there are some ceiling limitations here with him. And until that changes, there is going to be a cap on his ceiling. And there are going to be dud games like we saw in week 6 when he doesn't get in the end zone and he doesn't catch any passes. So just know that it's volatile. He's also still in a bad offensive situation. So don't go too crazy buying high. I'm not saying to sell, certainly not saying to sell low, but I just think we need to be like little bit realistic about what we can do with this. All right. Mark, I don't know about QJ falling down to earth. I mean, the first game off of a hamstring injury, like he caught a touchdown, whatever, had some misses on other targets. I just think it's like too quick to try to point out a trend here. Certainly it's a crowded receiving room, so there's going to be ups and downs. Like we saw Keenan Allen have a cold stretch. We've seen Ladd have a cold stretch. I just don't think we really know what to say about who's going to score at what week, but I'm still going to weigh the beginning of the year a little more heavily than his first game back off of an injury. I don't think Saquon Barkley is cooked. I just think that the offensive line is playing really badly right now, especially the interior, and the team just can't really get the running game going. I think better days are ahead for Barkley, probably more of a buy low at this point than a sell based on what you would get. But, you know, if I was wrong on Jonathan Taylor this offseason, I was at least right that Saquon was overvalued and that he was a sell high. I specifically made a video where I talked about Saquon being valued so much higher than Christian McCaffrey and how that didn't make sense to me. So at least some things are working out. All right, let's get into the any second list. Moving on from the data. The any second list, guys, is a list of players that I would sell in Dynasty for any second round pick. So I'm doing a couple names every week. The point of this list is not that I will never be wrong on a player. It's not that a player could never produce after being put on this list. There have been a couple players on this list who have rebounded their value and actually shown some signs of life. But I'm trying to highlight guys where I think process-wise, if you were to sell every one of these players for a second-round pick, I think you would make out ahead in the aggregate, and you would have some extra buying power to work with, keep your teams younger, to purchase players that you need when you need them. So last week, I put Jerry Jeudy, Tony Pollard, and Travis Kelce on this list. Travis Kelce had like an 8% target share in the first game back for Rice. It's a little bit skewed because they didn't play the fourth quarter, but I do think that it's going to be a big hit for him. Tony Pollard continues to struggle in just a terrible offensive situation. Tajay Spears making this into a committee backfield is complicating things as well. And Jerry Jeudy, just getting the most empty calorie targets that you've ever seen in your life. Jeudy is fine. Like he's getting some volume. He'll probably end up having a decent game or two at some point, but I just don't think he's the type of wide receiver you need to hold on to if you can just get a pick and have the flexibility. This week, maybe these are long shots, but I'm throwing them out there. One of them is Romeo Doubs. He's been pretty consistently useful in that kind of flex range. He runs the most routes for the Packers for whatever reason. Never really earns a very high targets per out run. Isn't that efficient, but he's out there. The reason I put him on this list is he's put a couple of decent games back to back. There's plenty of bye weeks and injuries. This might be your best chance to sort of sell high on a guy that just doesn't really have any type of ceiling. And Christian Watson is going to start working back into this rotation soon, maybe week 8, maybe week 9. Matthew Golden is still, ramping up his usage. I think he's going to get more involved over the course of the year. So this might be a time that you could cash out on Dobbs for a second, maybe something close to a second. Ramondre Stevenson, he ran all over the Titans. He's been pretty awful otherwise, and I don't want you to let the fact that Travion Henderson is struggling so much to mask the fact that Ramondre Stevenson is also not really doing much this year. The Patriots' run blocking is not good. Their running game in general is not effective. Ramondre had more rushing yards in the first 2 series of the game yesterday than he had the last 2 weeks combined. So if people are just looking at the box score, if they're just looking at the usage for this past week, I still think you want to get out of Ramondre sooner than later. Again, this is not going to be a guarantee in every league, but when you have teams that are trying to compete, that need running back help, that see a guy getting a lot of carries, it's worth a try. And by the way, if you need to add a little something on top, you need to add a fourth on there or something to get it done, I'm fine with that. Kayshon Boutte, again, kind of a long shot here. Patriots receiver who has a couple of big games recently. He's been catching touchdowns. If people think this is the start of some kind of a real breakout, I think you want to capitalize on that, because I just don't think that it is. Despite the fact that he's had some big games, Kayshon Boutte is running just 68% of the routes this year. He has an 11.8% target share. He has 24 targets in 7 games. So he's getting a little over 3 targets a game. And he's caught 4 touchdowns. So he's running very hot on touchdowns. He's not doing much else. I don't really have any shares, so maybe I'm just out of touch on this one, but I had seen some completed trades. All right, I kind of had to raise one eyebrow and say, is that how we're valuing him now? So I just want to throw the name out there as a guy in a 3 wide receiver format, deeper leagues. It's possible that you could sell high. So those are my names for this week. Let's get over to the risers. And let's start at the top with the man himself back from suspension, Rashee Rice. He's back. He is commanding targets. He's looking good. He had 10 targets in 3 quarters of a game. 28.6% target share, which would have been higher if he had to play the whole game. He had 2 touchdowns. He's getting the manufactured looks. He's right back into that role that we saw early last year. So Rashee Rice, to me, I think is a pretty good bet to finish as a top 5 wide receiver the rest of the season. He is 25 years old. He is tethered to the best quarterback in the NFL. I don't know how high is too high for him in Dynasty at this point. If we didn't have that injury last year, I think it's very possible he'd be valued as a top 20 asset in Dynasty right now. I have him ranked 26th overall currently, my wide receiver 11. And even that feels like, it might be too low. So you have to be very high on Rice, especially with how Mahomes is playing, because he's playing out of his mind the last month. I actually have neglected the chat for a minute here, so let me just catch up on a couple things. Connor, please do not send a future first-round pick for Oronde Gadsden. It's just not really how I think you should spend first-round picks. Is anytime a player starts to get into the ballpark of being worth a first that you send, I think you're going to want the flexibility of that pick. I don't know if it's a tight end premium, but even still, I wouldn't go that crazy. Is it over for Trevion Henderson? We'll talk about him in the Fallers. Devonta Smith, Harvey, and a late first for Burrow. I'm not sure what the situation would be where you'd be making this exact trade. If you're a rebuilder, you probably don't want to trade a first. If you're a contender, you don't want Burrow. I guess value-wise, I would take Burrow, but it's pretty close. And this is just a weird trade that I don't really like for either side. As a rebuilder, would you look to sell high on Rice? I would probably shop him, but I don't think he's a guy you have to sell. But I would shop him. I think you want to be looking at Igbuka. Maybe you can get McMillan. Maybe you can get one of those 2 guys plus a pick on top, a second on top. You could look at maybe trading him for Ashton Genty, who's been struggling a little bit. See what it would take to get Brock Bowers, or just try to break him down into 2 or more firsts. I wouldn't just trade him for 2 firsts with one of them being a playoff first. I would want more than that, but those are kind of the options you could look at. J Money is back again. Just traded Hendy, Ramondre, JJ, got Dak in a mid first. He's just here to brag. He's just super chatting to brag about his trade. I have Dak ahead of Henderson at this point. and I have a mid first ahead of JJ McCarthy and Ramondre. So I think that's a great deal. I like that. Blake, I'm going to highlight this comment, and I'm not trying to call you out. I just think it's like a line of thinking I see a lot where there's this sort of binary thought of like, should you sell a player? Should you buy a player? I just don't really get saying definitely don't sell Rice. Like, just because a player is young and obviously not an imminent risk of losing value doesn't mean you can't move a player for something else that's also good. So I do think there are ways you could use his value on a rebuilder to put yourself in a better position. Like, I think someone like Ted McMillan is not going to score the same as Rice the rest of this season, obviously. But I do think long-term they have similar dynasty value. If you can trade Rice on a rebuilder for Ted McMillan and get a second on top, I think that's a good move because I think you have a great young wide receiver long-term. You get extra value that you're benefiting from the fact that you don't need the points. I think there are underperforming players that are also very young, like Bowers or Genty, that can be a lot better in the future when their situations change. And I think you could capitalize on the current production to get a player that's better in the future. So I think there's just I think there are ways you can use a player's value that doesn't necessarily mean that they are a player you have to sell or that they're a bad asset to have. So that's all I wanted to say. You guys are telling me Igbuka is active tonight. I think that is crazy. I think that is misguided from the Buccaneers, but I guess it's fun. I really, 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 really hope that he doesn't further injure himself, especially in a week where the majority of people that roster him are probably not going to play him. So fingers crossed for Igbuka's hamstring tonight. Let's continue on the risers list here. Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart is looking pretty interesting. I can't call myself like a quarterback, film guru. That's not how I play this game. That's not my specialty. But the guy looks, he looks good on the field. Like, he's making things happen. You don't just score 30 something points against the Broncos by accident. He's playing with Wan'Dale Robinson and Theo Johnson as his top pass catchers. He runs around. Like, I think what's happening right now with Dart is pretty similar to Bo Nix last year, where he was this quarterback prospect that people didn't really have super high expectations for. He comes in and he runs sort of a somewhat simplified offense where you have this head coach that knows how to create favorable looks, that knows how to get some guys open. But the quarterback is showing a lot of, I don't know what's the word, moxie. He's making plays. He's hanging in the pocket. He's getting stuff done. And I just think there's a ton of upside here with Dart because he certainly looks better as a passer than I think a lot of people would have expected him to be if you knew that Neighbors was out and based on his college experience where he didn't play in like a traditional type of offense. So this just feels like an ascension that's happening here where regardless of whether Dart is like an elite actual quarterback, I think the value is clearly on the rise. And I think at this point, it's more likely than not, he is a top 30-ish, at least, dynasty asset after the season. Because again, he's going to be so fantasy friendly. He's like the QB4, I think, since he became a starter. He might turn the ball over and stuff, but he has this like gunslinger vibe. He's so confident. So I think this is something you want to be in on with Dart. And I think you can just decide after the season how real it is and whether you want to get off the train. Because if he hits as like a legit good passer, he's going to be a first round startup pick someday. The only thing that's going to keep him out is whether or not he can be an elite passer, because he's going to be back next year as the starter with Malik Neighbors with that high rushing floor. If he can be Drake May, as a passer, which I'm not saying he is, that's a very high bar. It's hard to project that, but it's possible. He already has the other stuff that you would need as far as an elite weapon. He has the mobility. He has, I guess, a decent coach. the last piece is whether he can progress as a passer, but if he can, the ceiling is just so high. Mark G with another super chat. I appreciate you. Hey man, 12 team, super flex. Quarterbacks are Penix, Herbert, Love, and Daniel Jones. I want to move off of one. Who would you move and for what? So looking at this team, looking at this group of quarterbacks, I think Herbert is the one I would most want to keep just because I just think he's so good. High ceiling, high floor, stable asset in Superflex. And then I think Daniel Jones is another guy I'd want to keep just as someone I think is still maybe undervalued in the market because of his kind of personal brand. So I think Penix and Love are the guys I'd look at moving. Penix would be my pick if you can get a first rounder. I would just trade. I think with this setup, I would just trade Penix for any first rounder, 2026, 2027, and just reallocate that value to other positions. That would be my go-to option. Or pivot him into like a wide receiver or a running back in that value range. Somebody like Jordan Addison. You'd have to add to get like a George Pickens, but I'd be willing to do that. Somebody like Chris Olave in that range. Trade him down for, I don't know, like a Tucker Kraft with a plus or Ricky Pearsall with a plus. I think he's the guy I would shop the most. But Love, if you could get anything close to like 2 firsts, 2 late firsts, I think that's fine to move off of him with the quarterback options you have around him. Joshua, is this a joke? You traded Kayshon Boutte for Colson Loveland? That's ridiculous. Like, I don't care what you think of Colson Loveland so far. That's a ridiculous return to get. Even in a non-tight end premium league, I would definitely want to do that. So, yeah. All right. Let's continue on here. Blacked Mind. I thought about putting Brashard Smith here on the list, but the truth of the matter is that the vast majority of his rush attempts came after this game was already over. Kareem Hunt was banged up. The backups were in. Brashard Smith got a bunch of carries in like the fourth quarter. He was getting the manufactured targets early in the game. He has a little bit of like a Jerick McKinnon type of role, but it's just so inconsistent right now that, I don't know when you actually can use him. He seems like kind of an interesting best ball asset, but Pacheco's been playing better lately. He's been getting a little bit more run. So, if Kareem Hunt was to miss significant time, he might get enough work to be like a flex play. Until then, he's just a guy you're stashing. Next up is Christian McCaffrey, and this might be a weird one just because, we know who McCaffrey is. And so it's like, okay, he had a big game, but why is he a riser? He's a riser for me just because I've sort of decided after this past game that he needs to be higher in my rankings, regardless of whatever his age or his injury risk, because he's just such a needle moving asset. So I've moved him up to 41st overall in my ranks, RB10. And I have him back to back with James Cook. I could totally see flipping him over James Cook. In fact, I might just do that. He's just such a difference maker. He's one of the few players that, barring injury, is going to be on a ridiculous number of playoff teams, championship teams. You have to swing on these guys in Dynasty sometimes, or you're just not going to win. So he's looking like an absolute smash this year. And I've moved him up a tier since last night. So he is a riser for me. I do want to get to Travis Hunter here because he's one of the most interesting guys to discuss. I will say Video Vandal, AJ Brown thoughts. I'm not really selling high because I don't think people are going to massively change their opinion of him based on this one game. I think he's a guy you can continue to start, and he's going to be kind of a high-end, if I had to guess, I'd say high-end wide receiver 2 type with some spike week potential. Probably not a wide receiver 1 for me rest of season. I did sell him in one league where I'm kind of on the verge of rebuilding. Like I was sort of flirting with it, and then I wasn't sure what to do, and then I won this week, so we'll see. But I did sell AJ Brown for a first round pick of a 2-4 team that probably 50-50 to make the playoffs, plus a Rondé Gadsden in tight end premium. Now that was before Gadsden's huge game, but just to give you a thought of where I'm at with his value, I wouldn't change my thoughts too much after this one. All right. Travis Hunter, riser. My only regret on Travis Hunter is that I finally conceded to calling him a faller last week. And then he finally does the thing. I was out in front on Travis Hunter. I was high on him. And then I just got frustrated, man. I got frustrated with his usage. I was frustrated that he was running a lot of routes the last couple of weeks and not earning the targets. Now, I never dropped him nearly as far as the market did. I always, if you were following my rankings, like if you're a member, you have my rankings, you were never low on Travis Hunter to the point that you would actually have ever sold him to anyone, because I still had him like tiers ahead of where the average person would. But I have moved him back up a little bit. I have him wide receiver 17 at this point in my rankings, right next to Zay Flowers. I still have him ahead of Waddle. I have him ahead of AJ Brown. I am very excited about this recent game. Like, he finally did all the things that we hoped he would do. He had an 89% route participation, and I'm not sure if he played any defense. I know like third quarter or so, he had still played 0 defensive snaps, so I don't think he played like at all. So he's running almost all of the routes on offense. Even if he's just playing in 11 personnel, the Jaguars run that at such a high rate that it doesn't really matter. He had a 29.2% target share, according to Ryan Heath, highest mark by a Jaguars player in any game this season. And he has a 17.4% target share on the season, which isn't amazing, but it's only like 3 or 4 percentage points behind Emeka Egbuka, Ted McMillan. So he is on the rise. His role is getting better week in and week out. We also got the seal of approval from Matt Harmon, who says Hunter played 41% outside and 59% in the slot. He's pretty clearly being ramped up, with more being put on his plate in the last few weeks. We're on the right track here offensively for Travis Hunter and trending up. So we've got the blessing from Matt Harmon, who was very high on Hunter in the pre-draft process. Hunter looked awesome. I went back and watched, all of his targets and receptions, and just for my eye test, he looks very good. So I'm excited. And, if I have plenty of Brian Thomas, I don't want him to miss time, but if he misses time, or if he just continues to be limited with this injury, that's going to help Hunter. They clearly wanted to get him more of those first read looks. So I think we're seeing an emergence here. We'll see what kind of a ceiling he gives us over the course of the season, just with, Lawrence struggling a lot. But yeah, I mean, this is really good. This is what you want to see. And he's still the second overall pick. He still has an incredible college pedigree, in my opinion. So yeah, got to be excited about this one, especially if you bought low. Jabulani, I will not wait. If you can get, I don't really know how often you have the opportunity to get Christian McCaffrey at this point. Feels unlikely he's not on a contender already, but I think you want to get him as soon as you possibly can. I don't really believe in like late season acquisitions. I think that when you're buying a player who is clearly depreciating in value, you want as many games out of that player as you can possibly get, because if they're not helping you get a bye week, the impact that they can have over just a couple of games sample in the playoffs is limited. Just obviously he's one of those few players that can swing a matchup on his own, but I still think if you're going to get McCaffrey, you're better off just getting him now, because he can help you get into bye week position, and that's huge. That does a lot for your odds. I'm going to skip the rest of the questions for now and just get to the rest of these risers. Jordan Addison, not a huge riser for me, but just a little bit of a reminder that he is a very good player and he's in a good scheme. I think TJ Hawkinson has clearly been distanced as that third option, where Addison and Jefferson are just dominating the targets, especially in this game. And the nice thing about Addison, right? He's a young player. He's clearly talented. He has this like huge spike week upside, where in 3 wide receiver leagues, with, if you have like a start 10 league, 3 wide receiver spots and a flex, you can just play him every week and he's going to give you his like 11, 12 points per game minimum. But you also have these huge games where if the defense is going to shift towards Justin Jefferson in a big way, which on the Eagles, there's a huge drop off at the second corner spot. Addison is capable of doing this. It's like Devonta Smith too. He's just younger, but Devonta Smith, same deal. Like he can still blow up even with AJ Brown. He can have these huge games and he plays a position that has the longest shelf life, has the safest value insulation, and they have long careers. So I think Addison is a guy that you want specifically in larger lineup leagues, 3 wide receiver leagues, full PPR formats, but he is a good player to have. Javonte just continues to make me look like a fool. I put him on this stream after week 1 and I said I would sell him for a second. And the reason I said that is because Javonte Williams over the course of the 2023 season, the 2024 season was, virtually the least effective running back in the NFL. And certainly you could say, yeah, well, he had a devastating knee injury, and he did. And I just thought after 2 full years, we weren't going to see the old Javonte Williams come back. I just thought it was a lost cause. And it's not. He looks awesome. He looks incredible right now. So he has clearly found something. He has regained some of that health. And at this point, he's just looks like he never got injured. He's in an awesome situation to keep scoring the rest of the year. He is 25 years old. He turns 26 in April. And at this point, I just don't see why he's not going to re-sign with the Cowboys. So this is not just a 1-year rental situation at this point. I think this is a guy who can actually carry value over from this year to next year, at least like a, Chuba Hubbard type from last year where he gives you a good season. He gets kind of a medium level contract and he's back in the same offense, except it's a better offense. And Javonte has frankly looked awesome. So he's up to my 79th overall player in my rankings. And I do tend to be a little bit lower on running backs, I think, than the consensus. I have him at RB 18. So, I'm trying to do the right thing here with Javonte and just get the value right, even though I was wrong on him initially. Okay, let's go to the last few guys here. We don't have to spend too long on the last 2, but Oronde Gadsden, I had him on the risers list last week. I think that I had mentioned him before as a guy to stash, a guy to get on your teams. I hope you were able to do that because, man, this guy looks freaking awesome. Nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw this type of performance coming so early on, especially with Quentin Johnston back in the lineup. This was Ladd, Keenan, QJ, and Gadsden all in this game. 164 yards is insane to me. But the guy looks like prime Darren Waller out there. It's insane. He's just this hybrid player. He's a mismatch. He is a great mover. He's good at the catch point. He had some impressive production in college. Harbaugh talked him up all offseason, and he's running all the routes, basically. He's running a very high percentage of the routes for a guy of his stature, his proclivity as a blocker. He's not a regular tight end. He's a move tight end, and we'll see what that means for his ceiling. I don't want to get too insane with his value because the Chargers aren't going to throw the ball 55 times a week, and I don't know exactly long-term what his role looks like because he's not a guy that right now he's not a guy that can block. So he has to be this elite receiving weapon to continue to get the playing time. But right now they seem content to put him out there a bunch. So you got to be excited. I moved him. Don't hear what I'm not saying. I moved him up a lot. I moved him up to my early second round tier. I have him at tight end 9 in Dynasty. I have him back to back to back with Fannin and Jake Ferguson. So Gadsden for me, ahead of George Kittle in Dynasty, not far behind Tucker Kraft in Dynasty. He looks great. He looks absolutely great. I would still sell him for a first personally, And I would still rather have Colston Loveland, which I know for some people is going to be like frustrating. You're going to think it's just like take lock. I don't think it's take lock. I just think that Loveland still has the more traditional profile for a tight end. He still was the 10th overall pick. He still had an insanely good college production profile. This is a guy that is very, very young as a prospect, had a hip injury, had surgery this offseason. Like, let's give him some time. And then also, I do think that long-term Ladd and QJ present target competition. I guess, I don't know. The target competition thing is kind of a moot point because Rome is there, Burden's there. Potentially that's, a guy to worry about. So I'll leave the target competition alone, but I'll still take Loveland by a little bit. And just, hope he doesn't make me look silly. We've got Swift here as another riser, just kind of a begrudging, like, I guess I have to move him up because I was really low on him. I thought he was just more likely to split work or lose his job. He is splitting work with Monangai, but they're running the ball a lot, and he's been more effective recently. I think he's had some soft matchups. I still think that he is not a long-term play whatsoever. So to answer this question here from Rowan, I think DeAndre Swift is a long-term sell. I would be shopping him. I would try to sell him high. The only reason he's a riser for me is because I just had him too low. I had him, offensively low, I guess you could say, for a starting running back, and he's not going away entirely anytime soon. So I would be shopping him. I'd try to sell high on him, like some guys I would rather have if I could figure that out for a second. Like, certainly if you could get like an early second, I would rather have that. If you could get if you could sell him for like Woody Marks with a plus, if you could sell him for like Alec Ayomanor, you could sell him for Stephon Diggs, somebody like that, maybe Josh Downs, like somebody in that conversation. If you're not using him, somebody like Bishal Tootin with a plus, something like that. Maybe you could flip him for like RJ Harvey straight up after this week. I don't know, but whatever. Last guy is Joe Flacco. Just, reassuring to see him come through with such a huge performance against the Steelers. He seems like a guy you can at least stream as a QB2 option the rest of the year. And that means he has some value, right? So if you're not competing, I'm happy to sell him for a 3rd round pick. There's no reason to hold on to him, as like a long-term play. This is going to run out for him. But if you need him and you can get him for a 3rd or less, and you need a quarterback, I think he's a guy you can play. And I think they have a pretty soft schedule, so he should be playable for a bit. Let's move over to the Fallers because we're getting a little bit long here on the stream, and I don't really want to go much over an hour. So let's go to our Fallers list, and we have some big names here. I do want to pump the brakes here with the Ashton Genty thing. I don't want you to think that I'm panicking, that I think the sky is falling here. Let me just make the case here for Genty. I will say long-term, I think Genty is an excellent football player, and I think he's going to be an asset you absolutely want to have. So let me just put that out there first and foremost. I think his situation leaves a lot to be desired. So that is the big problem right now, is that the Raiders are an absolute dumpster fire. I think Ashton Genty could be like my number 1 buy low candidate in the offseason, especially if people start doing things like flipping Quinshon Judkins ahead of him or whatever. I'm not going to go that far. I think you're going to want Ashton Genty in the long term. But you look at like Bijan Robinson, right? His rookie season, 2023, he finishes with 14.7 points per game. Bad Falcons team. They give Tyler Algier a little bit more work than we, would have liked or would have expected. You look at Ashton Genty right now, after his rough week 7, he is at Let me find him here. He's running back 17. He's at 13.9 points per game. So this is feeling kind of similar to me. It's not all the same reasons. It's more about the offensive woes, the offensive line being bad. But you're looking at this 101 pick, excellent prospect profile. I personally think has all the talent in the world on film. I just don't know if he's going to come through with the massive spike weeks for you this year. And so he has to be dinged a little bit in Dynasty, where running back is such an immediate production position. So some guys that I would rather have, just to give you context, I'm not dropping him that far. He's the 19th player in my ranks, but I would rather have in tight end premium Tyler Warren and Trey McBride. I would rather have Malik Neighbors. If somebody is like trying to compete and they have Neighbors, maybe you can tease them with an Ashton Genty as like a guy that they might want. I don't know why they would necessarily go for Genty as the competing piece, but maybe the thought process is like, stick with a young guy. I'd rather have Neighbors. And then kind of, obvious names ahead of him, Amon-Ra and Lamb, Jefferson, Bowers, Hurts and Mahomes. So like, I haven't moved him down dramatically, but I have moved him further away from the Bijan and the Gibbs group, and a little bit closer to the tier where I have Amari and Hampton. So he is a faller. It is what it is. The Geno Smith experiment has not panned out the way that I would have hoped. Brian Thomas comes next. Again, a guy that long-term I still like a lot. You have to adjust expectations for this year. He's not healthy. The offense isn't as good as we hoped. Trevor Lawrence isn't as good as we hoped. Whatever. It is what it is. He is a fringe top 36 asset for me right now. I have him with Garrett Wilson. I have him a little bit ahead of Ladd McConkey still. You can certainly argue either of those guys ahead of him. You could argue, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy ahead of him if you want. You could argue Christian McCaffrey ahead of him if you want to. I think that whole range is definitely flexible. But again, I don't want to like massively discount what he did as a rookie. I just have to be realistic about what we're getting right now with Thomas. So he's a faller. Trevion Henderson appears on this list for, I believe, the third consecutive week. I really just don't know what we're supposed to do with this guy. Like, if you like anybody that you can say he sucks, I guess, if you want to, but it's like, how do we even know, right? He doesn't even play. Just bizarre usage of the 36th overall pick from the New England Patriots. I don't know. Either they had no idea what they were going to do with this guy, or he has just not been nearly what they expected. I have to assume he's going to get a chance at some point to play. It would be so strange for him to be the 36th overall pick and just never get a chance to really have an audition at all. So probably a guy you just have to hold. I did move him down enough that if you could flip him for Josh Jacobs, if you could flip him for George Pickens, Jalen Waddle, I'm fine with those guys, but I just don't even know if you're getting any of those players for him in the average league. You would have to find a Henderson truther to get that done. So I just think he's more of a hold than anything else. And it is what it is. It sucks. But not every week, but we've seen over the last few weeks some rookies pop up that looked disappointing and then suddenly didn't, right? We had the JCM big game and now he's come back down to earth a bit. We had the Travis Hunter game this week. So it can turn around quick. We just don't know yet. Video Vandal. I had Kyler last week on the Fallers. So he is a faller, but I didn't want to bring him back up again. I mean, it's really not an issue for like Joey. Yeah, I agree. He would share touches with another running back, but like there's nothing wrong with sharing touches with another running back. Like Gibbs shares touches with Montgomery. Most running backs share touches with someone else in their backfield. Like Quinshon Judkins doesn't run any routes. He doesn't play any of the third downs. He doesn't play 2-minute drill. They just play Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson a bunch in those spots. So there's nothing wrong with sharing touches. He's just not even getting a reasonable share of the touches. So it's just been weird. Trevor Lawrence is going to be a faller here this week. Like, I mean, international games can be weird, but Lawrence just looked completely lost for the vast majority of that game, and he has just put a lot more negative than positive on tape this year. I will say, and this doesn't make him good, it doesn't excuse any of his mistakes, I swear I've never seen a quarterback deal with more drops and mental errors than this guy does. Like, he had plenty of missed throws. He also definitely had like 4 to 5 drops in this game. I don't know why nobody can catch his passes. But it's tough stuff. Like, Brian Thomas was dropping passes. Parker Washington had a drop. Tim Patrick had a drop. Like, it's crazy. Hunter Long dropped a tight end screen that looked like it was pretty well blocked. Like, it's just crazy how many miscues. But I've moved him down a bit. I don't think he's going to lose his job. He's on a big contract. He's still young. They're winning they're winning enough games to kind of stay in relevance. I compared Trevor Lawrence to Derek Carr in the Sells video a few weeks ago. I still think that's a reasonable comp. Like, he's a guy who's going to hang around in that QB2 conversation. I don't think he's ever going to get benched, or like not for a long time. He's just going to hang around and be a guy you can start, but you're maybe never really that excited to start outside of, really good matchups or something. So definitely a disappointment for the type of ceiling that I was hoping he had. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is another faller, just a little bit of a faller for me, because he's showing his limitations as a fantasy asset, right? When I put him in the buys video, I said, don't get too carried away with this guy. He's not a first round pick type of asset. I don't care how good he looked in that one game. He doesn't catch passes, and he doesn't have, a full monopoly, Jonathan Taylor type monopoly on the backfield. Jaden Daniels got a carry inside the 5 this week. Chris Rodriguez stole a touchdown inside the 5. It just, there are limitations to his upside, and with Jaden Daniels missing time, that hurts the offense, right? And with the pass catchers being out, that hurts the run game because there's not as much respect for the pass. So he has to be in an environment where he can run efficiently and he can get a lot of touchdown opportunities. And he's not in that position right now. And he had 2 cakewalk matchups back to back. Bears and Cowboys have both been run all over by guys this year, and he failed in both of them. And again, it's because the offense was limited. It's because the passing game was not efficient. But if he's going to be that type of guy, you have to limit the value on him. So he still remains like in my early second round tier, but I have dropped him behind some of the more reliable wide receivers and some of the other upside plays in the rookie group. Like, I'd rather have Gadsden at this point. I'd rather have Fannin. I'd still rather have Burden. But yeah, you have to get the expectations calibrated here. Let me just shout this out. Appreciate you, F. Pustorino. I don't know how I'm supposed to say that, buddy, but I appreciate you shouting out this segment. I like doing the risers and fallers. It's nice. Good way to kind of get some players in perspective here. Fuzzy Fiend, I know the game script was bad, but that's kind of the point. Like, when Mariota's playing, the game script is going to be bad. And a guy that is that game script dependent is just a problem. So no, I don't have any worries about Bucky Irving with the recent comments. Like, that's just coach speak. This coaching staff had both running backs coming into the year, and they chose to give Bucky a ridiculous share of touches. He's just unbelievably better than Rachaad White, and Rachaad White hasn't even been good with Bucky out. He's just done the bare minimum since he's been the starter. Like, he gets his touches. He's not efficient with them. I mean, he basically split with Sean Tucker last week. So no, I don't really have any concerns at all about Bucky Irving. Travis Etienne, faller. He just hasn't been good the last few weeks. And it's not just a matter of like, well, he scores points, he's up, and he doesn't score points, he's down. There's a trend here, which is that he's not catching passes. He's very sparsely used in the receiving game. They put LaQuint Allen in for a lot of the passing situations, so he's very much just a carries guy. The Jaguars have lately found themselves in more negative scripts, but I just think that's going to happen with the team not really getting out to hot starts early on. So he's just going to, again, he's going to be another game script dependent guy. I still think Tootin is good. I still think he's going to potentially gain some more work. And I have no idea what the future holds for Travis Etienne. Could he get an offseason bump if he signs with a really good team as a clear starter? Absolutely. Could he also be buried, stuck in a timeshare on a middling team? He could. So I just think that you have to kind of hedge between the two. And in general, there's usually an overabundance of running backs, not like a shortage of running backs. So yeah, he could hit free agency as a 26-year-old and it could work out for him, but it also could just not work out very well for him. He could just sign somewhere as a co-starter and then, we don't really have much excitement. So I think you got to temper expectations for him. He's still like a weekly start as a kind of low-end RB2, I think, and you can kind of play the matchups to know when he might be in a better spot, but you have to be realistic with him. Luke, the question of when you give up on Anthony Richardson is about I want to say 12 months ago at this point. So if you can possibly go back in time and change your opinions, that might be a good call. Chuba Hubbard, another faller for me. He comes back from his injury and plays in basically an even split with Rico Dowdle. It was 38 versus 33 snaps, 17 versus 9 routes. Had a little bit of an edge on the routes. Running back rush share, 45% for Hubbard, 55% for Dowdle, 10% target share versus 7%, and 7.5 versus 10.6 PPR points. That's courtesy of JJ Zacharyson. Basically, they just rotated drives in this game, so any discrepancy is really just about how long those drives went on for, but Dowdle was by far the more efficient player on the ground. I mean, he just played way better on the ground. Maybe that's Hubbard being injured, but I just think this remains a split. So I don't really have a lot of long-term optimism about Hubbard reclaiming a backfield or being a workhorse again. So he has to be a faller. He's just kind of in that streaming territory at this point. And then finally we go Geno Smith here. Just one of the worst performances we've seen from, literally the worst performance we've seen from an offense this year. 30 total snaps and, no points. Just unbelievably bad stuff. So it's looking rough. And I don't know if he makes it through the year as the starter. He probably doesn't. He probably gets benched for Kenny Pickett at some point. And that's rough. That's a rough scene. I didn't really see that coming. So I'll take the L on that one. I think that there's probably maybe a 50-50 chance or maybe a little bit higher that Geno could start somewhere in the future, whether that's back on the Raiders, whether that's on a team that could potentially be looking at another quarterback next year, like the Steelers, the Browns, the Dolphins, the Jets. There are enough teams that are kind of up in the air at quarterback that he could be one of those guys that lands on a team. So I wouldn't just sell him for nothing. I'm still going to keep him in kind of that late second range, but it is getting kind of bleak for Geno Smith's career. So those are the followers this week. I'll take some questions here before we wrap up, and then I will go and finish updating the rankings, and I'll see you guys later this week for another video. Before I get into these questions, just want to throw it out there. If you have been watching this and you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that button. I'm doing this every single week, and I've also been putting out new Dynasty videos every week since about last February. So try to be as consistent as I can with the Dynasty content. And I also have membership available. I pinned the link in the chat. It's also in the description. Members get access to the rankings I've been referencing this whole time, the Dynasty rankings that I update every single Monday, as well as the private channels in the Pure Potential Discord. We've got a great little members community in there where we talk Dynasty all the time. And we also do weekly streams, kind of like this. Friday, Saturday nights, we do some big Dynasty discussions, strategy topics, trades, predicting future ADP, whatever kind of fun things are on our mind that week. So those are the member options. Feel free to check them out. Link in the description. Questions that we have from Drew. How much does Chris Olave go up after last week? I believe I'm like the highest person in Dynasty on Chris Olave, so he didn't move in my rankings. All that Chris Olave did this past week is finally confirm that he is capable of the type of games that I have expected all along. He's been leading the position, or nearly leading the position, in expected points the entire year. So some regression was due. Some regression was had. You can continue starting Chris Olave each and every week. With Chuba being so bad and the market being so bad, do I just hold him? People aren't even taking him for a second. Yeah, I mean, I think you can hold him. Like, things can always change. Rico could get hurt. Chuba could go to another team. Like, you don't really know. You very rarely want to just sell a player just to sell him. I think if you got like 2/3, maybe you could find some players to pivot to, somebody that I have ranked ahead of Hubbard. Like, I think if you wanted to take a swing on like a Caleb Johnson, if you wanted to take a swing on someone like Spencer Rattler, you could maybe do that. Maybe Jaden Higgins, Isaiah Likely in tight end premium. Like, I think there's some guys you could look for, but it's okay to hold. It happens. Would you trade a 26 mid-first for Travis Hunter? Yeah, I think I would do that. I mean, I always want to explore my options with first-round picks before I send them away. But I have him ranked ahead of a base first. So that's good value, in my opinion, to get him for that first. But I just think, when you have a first-round pick, you only get to trade that once. So I'd at least look around, see if there are even higher-end options that are available. Even if it's not a straight-up swap, if you can add something extra on that first and get into an even higher tier of asset, I'd be pretty intrigued. The Crunch 777 says, I need help. I have Bowers. I'm a contending team. My running backs suck. Should I sell him away? I have Gadsden from the Chargers. I mean, kind of depends if this is a tight end premium league or not. In tight end premium, I want to be pretty careful about how I'm trading Brock Bowers. Like, I still have him ranked pretty aggressively in the same type of range as like Jahmyr Gibbs, as Justin Jefferson. He's just an awesome player, and he's going to have a long and really good career as a tight end. So I wouldn't just sell him low because you're competing and need running backs. I think there's other ways you can go out and acquire running backs. So my answer is you can sell him if you're getting good value and you're getting another elite asset in return. If you're not getting another elite asset, I would probably just look to sell Gadsden instead and just try to get by for a couple weeks. Brock Bowers should be back in week 9. So that'd be my take. Austin, how's it going? Glad you could make the end of the stream here. I'm being offered Genty for George Pickens. I have CD back. Please accept that trade like yesterday. Yes, Ashton Genty is still a far more valuable dynasty asset than George Pickens. Please take Ashton Genty. Would you sell J.K. Dobbins for any second on a rebuilder? Probably, yeah. I think that's the right move. I think you just want to take the insulated asset there. The Pokemon guy, do I trade Dart for Penix, Gadsden, and a third in a 12 by 11 1.0 tight end premium? Wow, 1.0 tight end premium makes this interesting. Man, I wish I liked Michael Penix at all. That would definitely boost Gadsden up into that late first range in a heavy tight end premium like that. Penix I have also in the late 1 range. I have got Dart sitting at, man, almost 2 base firsts. I think it's very close for me. I think I would still take Dart for now. I think I would still take Dart. A few more guys, and then we're going to close this thing out. Superflex heavy contender could use a running back upgrade. Allen, Prescott, Dart. Should I consider trading Dart or Prescott? Better to keep all 3. I think you can consider tearing down from one of those guys if you could get, like, I don't know, Darnold plus or Daniel Jones plus. There's not a lot of great tear down options. Maybe Stafford with a big plus on top, because I don't really want to be buying like Bryce Young or Tua right now, or Geno, obviously, because those guys are super risky. So I don't think you have to. I think if there's a couple quarterbacks you could look to tier down, and if it helps you upgrade elsewhere, I'd be open to it. But nothing wrong with having some great quarterbacks, having options, having safety with that. Would you be comfortable trading Bucky and an early second for Brees and an early first? Yeah, I would take the early first there, because I think the early first is going to be as valuable, if not more so, than Bucky, and I think Brees is probably more valuable than the pick. So, yeah. Sherman, we had talked about this trade in the Discord. Caleb and Brian Thomas for Josh Allen. I think with the recent movements for Brian Thomas in the rankings, and especially with my kind of like pessimistic outlook on him rest of season, I do think that you can justify this trade. If you have a high value team, if you have a pretty good roster around him, I think you can consolidate this value into Josh Allen. I think it can be okay. Yeah. All right. Thoughts on Justin Jefferson rest of season? I think this was a tough matchup. I think the Eagles are pretty tough on wide receiver ones when Quinyon Mitchell is healthy. It's still a good defense. So I think you want to hope for better days. That being said, I think we do see McCarthy back in the lineup in week 9. I think they play Thursday Night Football this week. They're not going to bring him back for that. But I do think Wentz has played poorly enough at this point that they're just going to go back to McCarthy. They said this on the Underdog reaction video, and I agree with it. Like, they're not going to win the Super Bowl with Carson Wentz. They might not even make the playoffs with Carson Wentz. So they got to get McCarthy back in there and just let him play and see what he can do. I think that starts in week 9. He's absolutely healthy from that injury at this point. It's just whether they are ready to put him out there. And I don't think they'll put him out there on a short week, but I think the week after that, he's going to be back in the lineup. So what that means for Jefferson is going to really depend on how much McCarthy can develop in a hurry. But I think Jefferson's kind of like wide receiver, 8 the rest of the way. Something like that. I would take Chase. I would take Puka, Amon-Ra, Lamb, Rice. What's that? 5 guys over him. Probably would take Nico and Jefferson is kind of really close for me. I'm sure I'm missing somebody obvious, but those are the guys that come to mind. Puka, Chase, JSN. Puka, Chase, JSN, Lamb, Amon-Ra, Rice. So wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8, rest of the way would be my take. All right. Dynasty Dave, I appreciate you, man. The people of Paul Cooks, I appreciate you popping in so frequently for these streams, hanging out. Appreciate all you guys coming out. Got to get this thing wrapped up. Like I said, got to finish the rankings. Got to get ready for Monday Night Football. Doubleheader tonight with Lions, Bucks, and Texans, Seahawks. I will be fast asleep before halftime of the Texans-Seahawks game. 10 p.m. kickoff East Coast is just not going to work for me, but hope you guys enjoy the games tonight, and hope you win your matchups. Again, thank you guys for coming and hanging out. Consider becoming a member. Check out the link in the description, and I will see you all later this week with another Dynasty video.